Shares of FireEye firing up today, closing more than 7% higher. Shares were up 12% at the highs of the session, trading at levels not seen since 2015. Shares more than recovering from a hack earlier this month, which sent shares plunging that day. For more on this and the broader cybersecurity space, let's bring in Andrew Nowinski, Senior Research Analyst at D.A. Davidson. Andrew, great to have you with us. I read your note the day of the hack, and you actually thought that FireEye would suffer reputationally and could possibly lose customers. What happened in the course of it? I mean, we know so much more about the hack, that FireEye wasn't the target per se, that there were other big companies, other government agencies that were targets as well. What makes this FireEye story compelling now?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Melissa. So hats off to FireEye. They really, took the high road with regard to this breach, which is definitely benefiting their stock. And if you look at the transparency they provided, only about 5 to 6 organizations so far out of the 18,000 that were breached have even disclosed that they were breached, and none have provided any details on how it happened. FireEye provided a tremendous amount of insight on the breach and how it worked and what was stolen. And then second, the 18,000 organizations that were breached, they will definitely need Mandiant services that FireEye can provide for incident response to help clean up this breach. I'm sure Mandiant will be very busy going forward. They're one of the top incident response organizations in the world, but it's highly unlikely that they have enough staff to meet demand. I'd say it's also a very low-margin business, so it's as an investor, you really don't want to see that kind of business increasing in mix unless it's significantly driving the sale of their products.
I hate to bring this up because it's typically a non-starter, but in this space, I think it's worthy of a question. Is this an acquisition target? I know it's been there for a while prior to this huge stock move. Potentially still could be at these levels?
Yeah, fair question. So, I think everyone is in or covets the Mandiant service that they have. It's the best-in-class incident response service, and that demand for that service will be likely in demand from now for the next 30 years. There's always going to be a demand for responding to breaches. The problem is the rest of their portfolio, isn't best in class compared to some other solutions. I'd say, number one, they didn't stop the breach. They did lose their red teaming tools and data. It also took them 9 months to detect the malware. Now, no one can blame them for unknowingly receiving that malware from SolarWinds, and they certainly don't make all the security tools they use in their infrastructure. But I would still question as to why did their HX series not detect this malware? We think CrowdStrike, which has a best-in-class solution, could have actually stopped this breach, which would make FireEye less appealing as a takeout candidate.
So, hey, it's Tim. So you may have just kind of given me some insight into the answer to my question, which is the competitive landscape. Where do you see FireEye? Where do you see the industry like CrowdStrike, who really does seem to be growing, especially within the Fortune 500 companies?
Yeah, another good question. So, first thing I would highlight is that if you look at the SolarWinds 8K from last week, they said the first thing that they did in response to this breach was to purchase the CrowdStrike software. And I think that many of the 18,000 organizations that were breached will likely follow this lead. So we do think CrowdStrike is absolutely best positioned in terms of the competitive landscape and should benefit from that going forward in 2021. Now, there's other things that went wrong in this breach. There's a lot of different products that failed along the way after the malware got in. We think one of the best ways really to defend your organization from becoming the next victim is to embrace what's called the Zero Trust framework. We think Zscaler really is one of those stocks that's completely built their entire organization around Zero Trust. Okta is another one, very complementary to Zero Trust. CrowdStrike also, very complementary to Zero Trust. So I would say those are some of the top ideas in terms of who could benefit from the competitive landscape going forward because of this breach.
Andrew, great to speak with you and get your thoughts. We appreciate it. Andrew Nowinski, D.A. Davidson. CrowdStrike 52-week high yesterday. Zscaler, which you just mentioned, new high in today's session. Nadine, is this an area that tempts you?
It reminds me of what I tell my kids, right? When you have a problem, say it early and explain it and don't do it again. And I think that that's what happened today, as you saw with FireEye. But as we heard, basically it comes down to the products, and products are leapfrogging each other, and we don't necessarily know along the chain which products have had the problem or let the problem through. So I think you have to be pretty careful when selecting these companies, especially in the back of obviously the issue here. So it's not an area that I'm playing in right now. I'm just letting it watch, and we'll see if something surfaces that gets a little bit more exciting.
Guy, just quickly, you've been hot on FireEye, but Andrew brought up a good point in terms of the kind of business that might come from this hack is a lower margin business, which you wouldn't want.
Yeah, I totally get it. And, you know, the other part about the FireEye move was when everybody else got hacked, I think that gave air cover to FireEye in terms of the stock. And we spoke about that a couple weeks ago. Look, the stock has now doubled apparently in like a week and a half, which is, as you know, completely ridiculous. And it traded 48 million shares, I think, today, or just short of 48 million. It typically trades 6. So you probably blew out a lot of shorts. You got a lot of latecomers in. So if you're taking money off the table here, it's probably the right move. But the space is in play. We've talked about Palo Alto Networks seemingly forever. That seems to make a new all-time high every day. I think you stay with Palo Alto, take money off the table on FireEye, look for the pullback to the low 20s.
All right.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.